Order 66 killed nearly every Jedi in the galaxy in a matter of minutes. Thousands of lightsabers went silent, and the order that had protected the Republic for generations was erased almost overnight, but not completely. A handful of Jedi survived the Purge, and what they did next changed everything. Today I'm breaking down every single Order 66 survivor and explaining how they made it out alive, starting with the most powerful Jedi who ever lived. Yoda, the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy, survived Order 66, and then chose to live in a swamp. Let that sink in for a second. Yoda, the 900-year-old Grandmaster of the Jedi Order, the being who could ragdoll Sith Lords with a flick of his wrist, looked at the fall of the Republic, the slaughter of his students, the rise of the Empire, and decided the best move was to sit in a mud hut on Dagobah and do absolutely nothing. And here's the thing, he might have been right. When Order 66 hit in 19 BBY, Yoda survived with the help of Wookiees on Kashyyyk and managed to escape off-world. He attempted to confront Palpatine directly in the Senate chamber, and he lost. That defeat broke something in him. Rather than regroup, rally surviving Jedi, or mount any kind of resistance, Yoda vanished. He chose Dagobah specifically because the planet's immense dark side energy masked his Force signature completely. For nearly 2 decades, he sat in total isolation, cut off from every surviving Jedi, every galactic conflict, every atrocity the Empire committed. Fans still argue about this constantly. Was Yoda playing the longest game in galactic history, waiting for the exact right moment to train Luke Skywalker starting in 3 ABY, or did the most powerful Jedi alive simply give up? The answer is probably both. His patience directly enabled Luke's training and the eventual destruction of the Sith, but 20 years of silence while billions suffered is a heavy price for patience. Yoda died at 900 years old in 4 ABY, the longest-lived survivor of the Purge. He weaponized patience itself and turned inaction into strategy. But whether that strategy was wisdom or the galaxy's greatest missed opportunity depends entirely on who you ask. And Yoda wasn't the only legendary Jedi who traded his lightsaber for a hermit's life, Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is the man who trained the guy who destroyed the Jedi Order. And his punishment? Spending 19 years babysitting that guy's son in the middle of nowhere. Obi-Wan Kenobi survived Order 66 on Utapau in 19 BBY, and honestly, his escape was almost anticlimactic compared to what came after. He fell into the water, his clones assumed he was dead, and that was it. The greatest general of the Clone Wars just vanished. He adopted the name Ben Kenobi, relocated to the Jundland Wastes on Tatooine, and committed to the most thankless job in galactic history. Think about who this man was: a Jedi Master who fought on the front lines of a galaxy-spanning war, a diplomat, a general, a lightsaber duelist who defeated Darth Maul, General Grievous, and Anakin Skywalker himself, and he traded all of that for a sand hut and binoculars. For 19 years, Obi-Wan watched over Luke Skywalker from a distance. The kid had no idea he existed. The entire future of the rebellion rested on one aging hermit not getting spotted by a random Imperial patrol. And the 2022 Kenobi series showed us what that isolation actually did to him psychologically. The nightmares, the guilt, the slow erosion of everything that made him who he was. Here's the debate fans still haven't settled. Was Obi-Wan's exile wisdom or avoidance? He called it patience. He called it the will of the Force, but you could also call it a man too broken to act, hiding behind philosophy. Either way, when he finally faced Vader on the Death Star at age 57, he didn't fight to win. He sacrificed himself deliberately, and that single act turned Luke Skywalker into the hero the galaxy needed. But Obi-Wan at least chose his exile. The next survivor on this list didn't get that luxury: Ahsoka Tano. Everyone calls Ahsoka Tano a survivor of Order 66, but here's the thing, she wasn't even a Jedi when it happened. Ahsoka left the Jedi Order in 19 BBY just months before Palpatine gave the command. She walked away, voluntarily, and at the time, fans called it abandonment. Some called it cowardice, a betrayal of everything Anakin had taught her, but that single decision, the one that looked like quitting, is the exact reason she's alive. When Order 66 activated, the Empire's entire suppression apparatus was calibrated to hunt Jedi, active Jedi, temple records, force tracking tools, Inquisitor kill lists. Ahsoka wasn't on any of them. She had operational invisibility that no other survivor could replicate because she technically wasn't a target, not officially, and she used every second of that advantage. For roughly 15 years, Ahsoka evaded Imperial forces completely, no capture, no close calls that forced her into permanent exile like Yoda or Obi-Wan. Instead, she made contact with Bail Organa's network around 5 BBY and became one of the earliest intelligence operatives in what would eventually become the Rebel Alliance. Her codename was Fulcrum. She didn't just survive. She built the infrastructure that other survivors used to stay alive and fight back. But here's where it gets complicated. Ahsoka knew exactly who Darth Vader was. She knew it was Anakin, her master, her brother in every way that mattered, and she fought him anyway. That's not survival instinct. That's conviction. Their duel on Malachor around 3 BBY should have killed her. By all rights, Vader should have ended it. But Ahsoka survived even that, pulled through the World Between Worlds by Ezra Bridger, making her one of the longest-serving active operatives in the Rebellion's entire pre-Civil War network. The girl who quit the Jedi Order ended up doing more for the galaxy's freedom than most of the Jedi who stayed. Walking away saved her life. Staying would have made her just another name on the Empire's kill list. Instead, she became the Rebellion's most valuable shadow. But if Ahsoka's survival was built on leaving the Order before the fall, the next survivor had no such luxury. He was a child when the clones turned, Kanan Jarrus. Most survivors on this list had some kind of plan, a network, a safe house, a mission to keep them going. Kanan Jarrus had nothing. He was a 14-year-old Padawan named Caleb Dume when Order 66 hit, and he watched his master get gunned down right in front of him. No grand escape, no strategic retreat, just a kid watching his teacher die and running for his life. And then he did something that none of the other survivors on this list did. He completely gave up. Caleb Dume didn't go into hiding like Obi-Wan, waiting for the right moment. He didn't join an intelligence network like Ahsoka. He buried his name, ditched his lightsaber, severed his connection to the Force, and became a nobody, a smuggler, a street-level criminal scraping by on the Outer Rim. For years, there was zero trace of the Jedi he used to be. He wasn't laying low with a purpose, he was just broken. That's what makes his story hit different. Because rebuilding yourself from absolute rock bottom, with no mentor, no order, no hope, is harder than surviving a battle. Around 5 BBY, he found a crew, co-founded one of the earliest rebellion cells, and slowly started becoming the Jedi he never got the chance to be. By 3 BBY, he was training Ezra Bridger, a street kid with raw Force potential and zero discipline. A scared Padawan who never finished his training was now the master. Then Maul blinded him. On Malachor, Kanan lost his sight permanently, but here's where it gets interesting. His blindness didn't weaken him, it stripped away his last reliance on the physical world and forced him deeper into the Force than he'd ever gone. He became a better Jedi without his eyes than he ever was with them. He died at 33, sacrificed himself to save his entire crew in one of the most emotionally devastating moments in all of Star Wars animation. No hesitation, no regret. Just a man who went from a terrified child to a true Jedi Knight and proved it in his final breath. But if Kanan's survival was defined by running from the fight, the next survivor on this list was defined by being dragged back into one, Cal Kestis. Most Order 66 survivors hid. Cal Kestis ran, and he kept running for years while the most dangerous people in the galaxy chased him. Cal was just a Padawan when Order 66 hit in 19 BBY. His master, Jaro Tapal, died protecting him during the initial clone betrayal, and Cal did what any traumatized kid would do. He disappeared. For roughly 5 years, he worked as a scrapper on Bracca, tearing apart old Republic warships for the Empire. Every single day, surrounded by the same clones that murdered his master. He survived by doing something almost no Jedi could manage. He shut the Force off, completely suppressed his connection to it, buried every instinct, every reflex, and lived as a nobody. That lasted until approximately 14 BBY, when he used the Force publicly to save a co-worker from falling to their death. One moment of compassion, and the Inquisitors found him almost immediately. Here's where Cal's story separates from everyone else on this list. He didn't find a new swamp to hide in. He became a full-blown fugitive, actively hunted by the Empire's elite Jedi killers. He fought the Second Sister, he fought the Ninth Sister, he survived encounters on multiple planets across the galaxy. But the headline is, Darth Vader. Cal Kestis looked Vader in the eye and walked away breathing. Not once. Multiple times, and he didn't do it through some hidden superpower or ancient technique, he did it through teamwork. Cal reunited with Ciri Junda, a former Jedi who became his mentor and kept him alive through the worst of the early Empire years. Together with a small crew of Force-sensitive allies and trusted companions, Cal stayed mobile, stayed connected, and stayed alive. His timeline stretches toward the era just before A New Hope, making him one of the longer-duration active survivors we know of, though his exact long-term fate still has some open questions in canon. The distinction matters. Cal wasn't a hermit, he was a fugitive, and that strategy of constant movement, constant allies, constant fighting is what kept him alive. But his mentor, Ciri, her survival story might be even more remarkable. Ciri Junda. Every other survivor on this list has one thing in common. They kept their connection to the Force. Ciri Junda didn't, and that's exactly what makes her story hit different. Ciri survived the initial purge as a Jedi Knight. She had the skills, the knowledge, the combat training. She was the real deal, but surviving Order 66 was only the beginning of her nightmare, because the Empire wasn't done with her. Shortly after the purge, the Empire caught up to her, and what followed wasn't a battle. It was systematic torture designed to break a Jedi completely, not kill them, break them. The kind of psychological destruction that doesn't leave visible scars, but hollows out everything inside. And it worked, but not in the way the Empire intended. Ciri eventually escaped, but the guilt and fear of what the dark side had almost pulled out of her was too much, so she made a choice. She voluntarily severed her own connection to the Force, not because it was taken from her, because she couldn't trust herself with it anymore. Here's where most people would check out of the story. A Jedi without the Force is like a pilot without a ship, right? That's what fans assume. That's what the Empire assumed. They were both wrong. Ciri kept going. She built safe house networks for other Force-sensitive survivors. She tracked down Cal Kestis and became his mentor, guiding him through some of the most dangerous encounters in the early Imperial era. She provided tactical intelligence, strategic planning, and the kind of hard-earned wisdom that no amount of Force sensitivity can replace, and nobody talks about how remarkable that is. Every other entry on this list survived because the Force gave them an edge. Ciri survived on pure determination, knowledge, and an absolute refusal to stop being useful. She couldn't sense danger coming. She couldn't deflect blaster bolts. She couldn't feel disturbances in anything. She just kept showing up. That's not a lesser version of survival. That's arguably the most impressive version, because Ciri proved something the Jedi Order never really acknowledged. The Force doesn't make you a Jedi. Your choices do. She functioned as a Jedi in every meaningful way after losing what most people consider the only thing that matters. But if Ciri's story challenges what it means to be a surviving Jedi, the next entry challenges what it means to survive as a child, because Gungi was just a youngling. Gungi. Most Order 66 survivors have a story, a escape route, a betrayal, a years-long struggle against the Empire. Gungi doesn't get some grand heroic saga, and that's exactly what makes his case so devastating. Gungi was a Wookiee youngling, one of the youngest Jedi trainees in the temple when the clones marched in. He'd trained under Yoda himself, built his own lightsaber with a rare wooden hilt during a gathering mission, and showed genuine promise as a Force-sensitive warrior of a species that almost never produced Jedi. He was a kid who happened to be standing in the worst possible building in the galaxy on the worst possible night. Here's what we know about his escape. Almost nothing. Gungi survived the initial temple purge. That much is confirmed. He made it out alive during the chaos of the 501st storming the halls, while Anakin Skywalker was personally cutting down younglings in the very rooms Gungi had trained in. How he escaped, who helped him, whether he fought or hid or ran, none of that is documented. He simply survived, and then he disappeared into the chaos of the new Empire. His survival didn't mean safety. Gungi eventually ended up captured by the Vanguard Axis, a group of mercenaries who had zero problem exploiting a child. It took Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, to rescue him and bring him home to Kashyyyk. A Wookiee Jedi youngling returned to his homeworld, surrounded by his own people for what may have been the first time since the temple fell. But here's where the tragedy really hits. Gungi wasn't just young, he was a member of a species with almost zero Jedi representation, meaning there was nobody out there who understood both his cultural identity and his Force sensitivity. No mentor, no Jedi support system, no institutional knowledge to fall back on. He was a child of a near-extinct Jedi lineage who walked out of a burning temple and into an empire that wanted him dead. even back on Kashyyyk, surrounded by fellow Wookiees, that Force connection made him fundamentally alone. He made it home. But what comes after that, whether he ever picked up his lightsaber again, whether the Empire or the Inquisitors eventually came knocking on Kashyyyk's forests, that part of the story remains untold. A child survived the worst day in Jedi history, found his way back to his people, and then the galaxy went quiet on him all over again. But if Gungi's story is defined by a long road home, the next survivors is defined by shadows. Because Quinlan Vos was built for disappearing. Quinlan Vos. This one's different, because with most Order 66 survivors, we at least know what happened. We know where they ran, who helped them, how they hid. With Quinlan Vos, we know almost nothing. And for a Jedi Master this powerful, that silence is either incredibly impressive or deeply unsettling. Here's what we do know. Quinlan Vos was a Jedi Master, a highly skilled tracker, and one of the Order's most effective covert operatives. But his real edge was psychometry, the ability to read memories and impressions from physical objects just by touching them. Pick up a blaster, and he could sense who fired it last. Touch a doorframe, and he could feel who walked through it. That ability alone makes him one of the hardest Jedi in the galaxy to track, because he could read a trail before anyone even knew they'd left one. When Order 66 hit, Vos survived. Canon reference materials confirm that much, but the how, the where, and the what happened next are almost completely blank. There's no documented escape route, no known safe house, no confirmed allies. He just vanishes from the historical record during one of the most heavily surveilled periods in galactic history, and that's where it gets uncomfortable. See, Quinlan Vos had history with the dark side before Order 66 ever happened. He'd been undercover with the Sith, formed a relationship with Asajj Ventress, and came dangerously close to falling completely. He pulled himself back, but barely. So when a Jedi with that kind of baggage goes completely silent for years, the fan community doesn't just wonder if he survived. They wonder what version of him survived, let me be honest. This entry leans heavily on implication and Legends material rather than explicit canon detail. The story of Quinlan Vos during the Dark Times is one Star Wars hasn't fully committed to telling yet, but a Force-sensitive operative with psychometric abilities and dark side experience who manages to leave zero trace during an era of galaxy-wide Jedi hunting. That's not just survival. That's someone who knew exactly how to become invisible. But while Vos erased himself from history, the next survivor tried to preserve it, and it cost her everything. Jocasta Nu. Most Jedi who survived Order 66 did it with a lightsaber, the Force, or raw combat instincts. Jocasta Nu survived with a library card. That's not a joke. Jocasta Nu was the chief librarian of the Jedi Temple, and when the clones stormed the building, she didn't fight her way out. She used the one advantage nobody else in the galaxy had. She knew every single security system, every hidden passage, every administrative backdoor in that entire building. She had spent decades cataloging and maintaining the temple's archives. She knew that place better than anyone alive, including the clones sent to purge it, and she used the building itself as her escape route. While other Jedi were being gunned down in hallways, Jocasta exploited access points and security protocols that the clone troopers didn't even know existed. No dramatic lightsaber duel, no force pushing through a wall of soldiers, just an old librarian who understood the architecture better than the people trying to kill her. It's genuinely one of the most underappreciated escapes of the entire purge, but here's where it gets tragic. Escaping the temple was the easy part. Staying away from it was the real problem. Jocasta survived into the early Imperial era, but she made the one decision that sealed her fate. She went back. She returned to the Jedi Temple to retrieve a holocron containing a list of Force-sensitive children because protecting the next generation mattered more than protecting herself. And Darth Vader was waiting. The dark irony is almost poetic. Jocasta Nu dedicated her entire life to preserving knowledge. That's all she ever did. She organized, cataloged, and protected information. Palpatine wanted her captured alive, but Jocasta made that impossible. During the confrontation, she revealed to the surrounding clone troopers that Vader was Anakin Skywalker, a secret Vader could never allow to survive. So he killed her with his lightsaber right there. She forced his hand by weaponizing the one thing she'd always wielded best, the truth. She proved that brains could get you out of the building, but going back into it for the right reasons could get you killed. And if Jocasta's death feels bleak, Wait until you hear what the Empire did with Luminara Unduli's body. Luminara Unduli. Not every Order 66 survivor got a story of resilience. Some got something far worse. Luminara Unduli survived the initial purge in 19 BBY, but her survival was brief, brutal, and ultimately turned into a weapon against the very people who might have come looking for her. Luminara was captured by clone forces relatively quickly after the execution order went out. No dramatic last stand, no years of clever evasion. She was detained and thrown into the Spire, an Imperial prison fortress on the ice world of Stygian Prime, held while the Empire consolidated its grip on the galaxy. But her story doesn't end with imprisonment. It ends with something genuinely horrifying. The Grand Inquisitor executed Luminara Unduli in her cell. No trial, no audience, no dramatic spectacle, just a Jedi Master killed in a cage on a frozen rock, and nobody in the galaxy even knew it happened. Years later, Kanan Jarrus, the same traumatized Padawan who watched his own master gunned down by clones, went looking for her. He sensed her presence. He believed she was still alive. He walked into the Spire expecting a rescue mission. Instead, he found a corpse. That wasn't an accident. That was the entire point, because here's where it gets truly dark. Luminara's death wasn't the end of her usefulness to the Empire. After her execution, her remains were preserved at the Spire, and the Empire broadcast holographic transmissions of her captivity, making it look like she was still alive, still imprisoned, still waiting for rescue. Any Jedi who sensed her lingering presence through the Force, anyone who heard rumors she might still be breathing, would come looking, and the Empire would be waiting. The Grand Inquisitor would be waiting. Think about that for a second. Luminara Unduli became more valuable to the Empire dead than she ever was as a prisoner. Her image was turned into a weapon against the people who loved her, who trained beside her, who would have risked everything to save her. She didn't just die. She was transformed into a tool of extermination aimed directly at her own kind. That's the coldest, most calculated thing the Empire ever did to a Jedi. No lightsaber duel, no dramatic confrontation, just a dead woman's hologram playing on a loop, waiting for someone to care enough to walk into the trap. But if Luminara's fate shows what the Empire did to survivors it caught, the next one shows what happened when a survivor's own mind became the enemy. Taron Malicos. Not every survivor of Order 66 fell to the Empire. Some fell to something worse, themselves. Taron Malicos survived the Purge. He was a Jedi Master, trained in the ways of the Force, disciplined enough to escape the initial massacre when clones turned on their generals across the galaxy. By every metric that matters, he made it out. He beat Order 66, and then he lost anyway. Shortly after the Purge in 19 BBY, Malicos ended up stranded on Dathomir. If you're not familiar, Dathomir is one of the most Force-saturated planets in the entire galaxy, and not in a good way. This is the homeworld of the Night Sisters, a place absolutely drenched in dark side energy. Every rock, every tree, every breath of air on that planet is pulling you toward corruption. For a Jedi Master trying to stay centered after watching his entire world collapse, it's the worst possible place to land, and he was alone. That's the detail that matters most. No other survivors to keep him grounded, no council, no master, no Padawan, just a broken Jedi on a planet that feeds on exactly the kind of fear, grief, and anger he was already drowning in. Over the next 5 years, Malicos didn't resist the corruption. He embraced it. Slowly at first, probably, then completely. He abandoned his Jedi identity, absorbed the Night Sisters' dark side teachings, and eventually positioned himself as a ruler of Dathomir. The man who survived Order 66 became something the Jedi Order would have hunted. When Cal Kestis arrived on Dathomir in 14 BBY, he found Malicos not as a fellow survivor, but as a threat. A manipulator trying to twist Cal toward the same darkness that consumed him. Their confrontation ended with Malicos' death, brought down by the combined efforts of Cal and Merrin, a Night Sister who turned against the fallen Jedi. What matters isn't just how he died, it's what he became. Here's the question nobody wants to sit with. How many other survivors ended up exactly like Taron Malicos? Not captured by Inquisitors, not killed by clones, just quietly consumed by isolation, grief, and proximity to things they weren't equipped to handle alone. Malicos isn't an anomaly, he's a warning. The galaxy is full of dark corners, where a broken Jedi could disappear and become something unrecognizable. We only know about Malicos because Cal happened to find him, but Malicos wasn't the only survivor who looked at the Jedi Order's destruction and decided the old ways were finished. at least one other came to that conclusion through a very different path. Baylan Skoll. Every survivor on this list made a choice after Order 66. Hide, grieve, rebuild, fight, fall. Baylan Skoll looked at all of those options and picked none of them. He just walked away. And that might be the most unsettling response to the Jedi Purge we've ever seen. Here's what makes Baylan fundamentally different from everyone else we've talked about. He wasn't a Padawan when Order 66 hit. He wasn't a youngling scrambling through temple corridors. He was a fully trained adult Jedi with complete combat mastery. He survived the Purge not because someone shielded him or because he got lucky. He survived because he was already dangerous enough to walk out on his own terms. But here's where it gets weird. After surviving, Baylan didn't do what any other Jedi survivor did. He didn't seek out hidden enclaves. He didn't try to contact other survivors. He didn't join the early seeds of the rebellion. He deliberately severed every single connection to existing Jedi networks and Force communities. Complete radio silence. He became a mercenary, a wandering sword for hire who happened to carry a lightsaber, and that decision is what kept him alive. Think about it. The Inquisitors hunted Jedi who acted like Jedi. Survivors who maintained their identity, who reached out to other Force users, who tried to protect the innocent in ways that left a trail. Those were the ones who got found. Baylan avoided the Inquisitors not by hiding in some cave on a forgotten planet, but by being strategically irrelevant. A lightsaber-carrying mercenary with zero Jedi allegiances wasn't worth the resources to hunt. He wasn't rebuilding the Order, he wasn't training apprentices, he wasn't a threat to Imperial ideology. He was just a guy with a glowing sword taking contracts. That's either the most pragmatic survival strategy on this entire list or the most chilling, because it implies something none of the other survivors would ever say out loud. Baylan Skoll looked at the Jedi Order, watched it collapse, and decided it was already a failed project, not worth saving, not worth mourning, just done. And then the Ahsoka series in 2023 revealed that his story goes much deeper than simple mercenary survival. His last documented activity positions him in connection with shadowy galactic forces that nobody fully understands yet. The visual storytelling in that series is doing enormous heavy lifting here, because the canonical documentation on Baylan is intentionally sparse. Almost everything we know comes from what's shown, not what's explained. Whether he represents a completely new third faction in the Force, a personal ambition decades in the making, or something else entirely, remains one of the most genuinely open questions in current Star Wars canon. And that ambiguity isn't accidental, it's deliberate. The creators want you asking this question. Every other survivor on this list has an arc we can trace. A beginning, a middle, and either an end or a clear trajectory. Baylan Skoll is the one survivor whose story is still actively being written, and nobody, not the fans, not the theorists, not even the most dedicated lore experts, knows where it's going. He survived Order 66 the same way he survived everything since, on his own terms, answering to nobody, with a plan that only he understands. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.